Ryan had never imagined that life would bring him to a point where $50 felt like the last hope for a home. He was a single father raising his young son Sammy with patience and quiet strength. Every morning he woke before sunrise and walked to a small workshop where he repaired old wooden furniture. His hands were skilled, but the pay was low. Still, he worked hard because he wanted Sammy to grow with comfort, even if life was simple. Their old rented room was small, and the roof leaked when it rained. Ryan often placed buckets under the dripping spots to keep their bedding dry. On the day the owner said he needed the room back for his own family, Ryan felt a heavy weight settle on his chest. He did not show his worry to Sammy though. He simply smiled and said they would find a better place. Sammy trusted him completely. For 3 days, Ryan walked through the town searching for a room that he could afford. Most houses cost more rent than he earned in a month. Just when he was about to lose hope, he saw a small paper pinned on a wooden notice board outside the market. The letters were faded but readable. It said a ruined cabin was for sale for $50. The price surprised him. It sounded too low, almost unreal. People who walked past barely looked at it. A ruined cabin deep in the woods was not something many wanted. But Ryan could not ignore it. $50 was something he could manage. Even if the cabin needed repairs, at least he would own it. He took a deep breath and memorized the address. He walked home with a new kind of hope in his heart. Sammy noticed his brighter mood and asked why he looked happy. Ryan told him about the cabin and said they would go see it in the morning. The path to the cabin began at the edge of the old forest road. The air felt cooler as they walked under tall trees. Birds sang above them, and sunlight flickered through the leaves in gentle patterns. Sammy looked around with curiosity, taking in every sight as if he were exploring a new world. After nearly an hour, they saw the cabin standing alone in a small clearing. The cabin looked as if it had been abandoned for many years. The roof had dark patches, and some parts looked weak. The wooden walls had cracks. The front door leaned slightly to one side. Grass had grown tall around the steps. There was silence all around. Yet the place did not feel frightening. It felt lonely, waiting for someone to give it life again. Ryan walked up the steps with careful steps and pushed the door open. The hinges groaned. Dust floated up like tiny clouds. Light entered through the broken window and revealed the inside. The single room had old furniture, all covered with dust. A small table stood near the window. 2 chairs rested in the corner. There was a doorway that led to a tiny bedroom. The floorboards creaked with every step. Sammy walked behind his father, feeling both excited and cautious. To him, even a broken cabin felt interesting. He picked up a small wooden toy from the floor. It was carved in the shape of a bird. Though old, it still had charm. Sammy smiled and placed it safely on the table. Ryan stood in the center of the room and imagined how the cabin could look after repairs. He had fixed many wooden things in his life. Perhaps he could fix a home too. The walls needed cleaning, the roof needed patching, and the floor needed polishing. But he believed he could do it. He felt a sense of purpose. Not long after the owner arrived, an elderly man with kind eyes and a slow walk. He greeted Ryan warmly and explained that he no longer wished to maintain the cabin. He said he had lived alone for many years and had moved to a smaller place. He wanted someone to take the cabin rather than let it fall apart. When Ryan handed him the $50, the man smiled and wished him good luck. With the cabin now theirs, Ryan and Sammy began cleaning it that very afternoon. They swept away dust, opened windows to let in fresh air, and cleared small pieces of broken wood. While cleaning the bedroom, Sammy noticed something strange. In the corner near the bed, a wooden floor panel looked slightly raised. All the other panels were flat and even. This one looked as if it had been moved many times. Sammy knelt down and pressed on the panel. It made a soft click but did not lift. He pressed again, this time pushing from the edge. The panel shifted a little. Excited, he called for his father. Ryan came quickly and examined the spot. The panel was not nailed shut. It must have been designed to move. With gentle care, Ryan lifted the wooden piece. Beneath it was a small dark opening. The inside looked hidden, untouched, as if time had forgotten it. Sammy leaned closer and felt a cool breeze rise from the darkness. His curiosity grew even more. Ryan took out their small flashlight. When he shined it into the opening, something metallic reflected the light. Both father and son froze. Resting quietly inside the hidden compartment was a metal chest. Dust covered its surface. The chest was rectangular, with a sturdy lock that looked old but not broken. Ryan reached into the opening and tried to lift the chest. It was heavier than he expected. He tightened his grip and managed to pull it out. When he placed it on the bedroom floor, the sound echoed softly through the small cabin. Sammy stared at the box with wide eyes, wondering what secrets it carried. Ryan knelt beside the chest. His fingers brushed the cool metal. He had never seen anything like it in his life. Why would someone hide such a box under the floor? Was it valuable, or was it something personal? The chest looked old enough to belong to another generation. Whoever hid it must have had a strong reason. Sammy noticed small patterns carved into the corners. They looked like marks someone had made by hand. The lock had no key around it. It was shut firmly. Ryan wondered how they could open it without breaking it, since he did not want to damage anything inside. The cabin suddenly felt different. It no longer seemed like a forgotten place. It felt like a location that carried a story buried within it. A simple life had brought Ryan here, but something extraordinary waited behind the dust and cracked wood. As the evening light softened outside, Ryan placed the chest on the table in the main room. He sat down and stared at it for a long time. His thoughts moved between fear and excitement. He wanted to open it, yet he worried about what he would find. Sammy stood beside him with a hopeful smile. To him, everything about this cabin had already turned into an adventure. The day had started with a search for a home. It ended with a hidden chest resting on their table, promising a future they never imagined. Ryan placed a protective hand on Sammy's shoulder. Whatever was inside this chest, he knew one thing clearly. Their simple life was about to change. Ryan woke early the next morning with the same thought that had stayed in his mind all night. The metal chest. It sat silently on the table, as if guarding a secret older than the cabin itself. He had spent hours wondering who put it there, when it was hidden, and what might be inside. But he had not touched it again. He wanted to wait until daylight, when he could think clearly. Sammy woke soon after. The moment he opened his eyes, he remembered the chest. His steps were quick as he rushed to the main room, and his face lit up the moment he saw it was still there. He asked his father if they could open it now. Ryan smiled gently. He knew Sammy was excited, but he wanted to be careful. The cabin was still slightly cold from the night. Ryan lit a small fire using dry sticks they had collected. Warm air filled the room slowly. They sat at the table with the chest between them. Ryan studied the lock closely for the first time in proper light. It was old but strong. The keyhole was narrow and shaped differently from usual locks. It looked like something from a long time ago. Ryan tried to wiggle the lock gently. It did not move. He did not want to break it by force. He looked around the cabin, hoping maybe the previous owner had left an old key somewhere. They searched through drawers, shelves, and even touched the edges of the walls. Nothing appeared. The place had been empty for far too long. Sammy suggested they search outside. Perhaps someone had dropped something near the cabin long ago. Ryan agreed. They stepped out into the morning light. Sunlight touched the grass and made it shine gently. Birds were singing in the trees, and the air felt fresh. They circled the cabin slowly, examining the ground and the base of the walls. But they found only stones, dry leaves, and pieces of broken wood. They walked a little farther, checking the boundary where the forest began. Sammy picked up sticks and turned over small rocks just in case something was hidden below. Still nothing. After a while, Ryan told him they should return inside. If there was a key, it was either lost or hidden in a place they had not yet discovered. Back inside, Ryan examined the chest again. On the lid were faint marks, as if someone had once tried to clean it. The edges of the metal had tiny scratches. This chest had lived through many years. Ryan felt a strange connection with it. He did not know why. Since the lock would not open, he decided to see if the bottom panel in the bedroom had any other hidden spaces. He returned to the room and placed the wooden panel aside again. He used the flashlight to inspect the area carefully. The space was clean except for a few cobwebs. There were no letters, no keys, no objects left behind. Just the chest. When Ryan told Sammy there was nothing else under the floor, the boy looked slightly disappointed. But his curiosity remained strong. He walked toward the chest and placed his hand on the lid lightly. He whispered that maybe the chest wanted them to find the key somewhere else. Ryan smiled at his imagination. Children often saw the world in ways adults could not. They decided to begin repairing the cabin while thinking of what to do about the chest. Ryan believed that fixing the cabin would give them comfort and stability. The place needed care, and he felt motivated. He took his tools from the bag he had brought and started working on the roof first. He climbed carefully, removed broken wooden planks, and replaced them with stronger ones he had purchased earlier. The cabin slowly began to look safer. Sammy helped by handing tools and bringing small pieces of wood. He loved being part of the work. He felt proud whenever Ryan praised him for being helpful. Every few minutes, however, he glanced back through the window to check if the chest was still there. It had become the center of his thoughts. As they worked, a soft breeze moved through the trees. The forest felt peaceful. Ryan could hear the gentle rustle of leaves. It gave him a strange comfort. For the first time in years, he felt like they were building something truly theirs. A home built with love and effort. By the afternoon, the main part of the roof was fixed. They entered the cabin, tired but satisfied. Ryan made a simple meal of bread and fruit. They ate quietly, both glancing often at the chest on the table. After finishing lunch, Ryan decided to try something new. He took a thin metal wire from his toolbox and gently tried picking the lock. He had no training in lockpicking, but he hoped the simple mechanism might respond. He turned the wire softly, trying not to damage anything. The lock did not budge. He tried again with a different angle. Still nothing. Sammy watched with excitement, hoping each movement would unlock the chest. When the lock refused to open even after several minutes, Ryan sighed and set the wire aside. He said they would have to find another way. As evening approached, the sky outside changed color. Gentle shades of orange mixed with soft blue. They stepped outside to watch the sunset. The view from the cabin clearing was beautiful. Sammy held his father's hand, and for a moment they forgot about the chest. They talked about how they would paint the cabin someday, plant flowers outside, and make a small wooden sign with their names on it. When the sun finally disappeared behind the trees, they went inside to prepare for the night. The cabin felt warmer now, thanks to the repairs. Sammy lay down with a soft blanket while Ryan sat at the table again, eyes fixed on the chest. The firelight flickered on the metal surface, making it look almost alive. Ryan began wondering about the history of the cabin. Who lived here before the old man? They must have been someone who wanted to hide something carefully. What if the chest contained family treasures? What if it held letters from a long time ago, or documents, worthless items to some but priceless to those who owned them? Sammy sat up and said something that surprised Ryan. He said that maybe the chest was not meant for the people who lived here earlier. Maybe it was meant for the people who found it. Those words stayed in Ryan's mind. The thought sounded strange, yet somehow meaningful. The next day, they walked to the nearby town to ask if anyone knew about the cabin's earlier owner. Most people knew very little. Some said the cabin had belonged to a quiet man many decades ago. Others claimed the place had changed owners many times. There were no clear answers. No one mentioned a hidden chest. It was as if the cabin's past had been lost to memory. When they returned, Ryan placed the chest on his lap and studied the carvings again. One of the markings looked slightly deeper than the others. He traced it with his finger. It looked like a symbol, almost like the letter M inside a small circle. He wondered what it meant. Perhaps it was a family mark or a code meant to identify the chest. Days passed, and the cabin continued to improve. They repaired windows, cleaned walls, and built a small shelf. Each day brought a new sense of achievement. Yet the chest remained unopened. It sat quietly, refusing to reveal its secrets. One afternoon, when Ryan returned from cutting wood, he saw Sammy sitting at the table staring at the chest with unusual focus. The boy touched the metal lightly, then turned to his father and said something simple but powerful. He said the chest felt important. He did not know why, but he felt it. Ryan realized that whatever was inside had become part of their journey now. They would not give up. The chest had waited for many years. Maybe it could wait a little longer. They just needed to find the right moment and the right way. As night settled over the cabin, the forest grew quiet again. The metal chest reflected the warm glow of the fire, as if keeping its secret carefully. And though it would not open, it felt as if something within it was silently watching their growing hope. Ryan did not know it yet, but the key to this mystery was far closer than he imagined. The next week passed with slow but steady progress. The cabin was beginning to look like a real home. Ryan repaired the broken window frames, polished the wooden table, and cleaned the walls until they showed their natural color again. Every improvement made Sammy smile. The boy woke each morning with energy, ready to help with whatever task his father planned for the day. But even while working, both of them thought constantly about the metal chest on the table. It had stayed locked and silent, like an object guarding its past with stubborn patience. Sometimes, when the sunlight hit the chest just right, the strange markings on the lid seemed to glow faintly. Sammy often traced those markings with his finger, wondering what story they told. One evening, after a long day of fixing the fireplace, Ryan sat down with the chest again. He examined the symbol shaped like an M inside a small circle. He felt there must be a meaning behind it. He wondered if it was the mark of a craftsman or maybe part of a family name. He had no clue, yet his curiosity grew stronger each day. Sammy sat beside him and whispered that maybe the chest wanted them to learn something first before it opened. Ryan laughed softly at the thought, but he also felt a strange sense of truth inside those words. Sometimes children understood things through feelings more than logic. The next morning, Ryan decided they should explore deeper into the forest. Maybe there were old houses or signs of the previous owners. The cabin had been around for many years, so surely someone in the area knew parts of its story. Sammy liked the idea immediately. He loved exploring and believed the forest might hold secrets connected to the chest. They packed bread and water and followed a narrow trail behind the cabin. Sunlight fell through the tall trees, creating warm patches on the ground. Birds flew above them, and small animals rustled in nearby bushes. The forest felt alive but peaceful. After walking for some time, they found the remains of an old wooden fence. It was almost entirely broken, but its shape suggested it once marked the boundary of a property. A few steps ahead stood a stone well, covered in moss. Sammy ran up to it and peered inside. The well was dry, showing only cracked stones. Ryan walked around the spot slowly. Near the well, he saw something carved into a large flat stone. It was faint and worn, but when he brushed away the dirt, the mark became clearer. A circle with an M inside it. The same mark from the chest. Ryan felt his heart beat faster. He called Sammy and showed him the carving. The boy gasped as if he had found treasure. They both stared at the stone in silence. It was proof that someone had used the same symbol to mark something important in this forest long ago. Ryan studied the ground near the stone. He found the remains of a burned wooden post. Sammy asked if it might have been part of a house. Ryan nodded. It looked like a small structure had once stood here but had burned down many years earlier. They spent the next hour searching around. They found broken pottery pieces, rusted nails, and a metal cup buried under leaves. All signs of a family that once lived here. But what happened to them and why would their symbol match the one on the chest? Ryan felt a sense of responsibility growing in his heart. If the chest belonged to these people, he wanted to honor its history. He wanted to understand what story the forest was trying to tell. They returned home before evening. As they approached the cabin, Ryan noticed something surprising. There were footprints near the entrance. They were small and looked recent. For a moment he felt uneasy. The cabin was far from town. No one usually came this way. He called out to see if anyone was nearby, but the forest remained quiet. Inside the cabin, nothing was disturbed. The chest still sat on the table. The tools were untouched. Sammy checked their belongings, and everything was as they left it. Still, the footprints stayed in Ryan's mind. Someone had visited the cabin while they were gone. That night, Ryan could not sleep easily. The forest outside was quiet, but his mind was restless. He worried someone might know about the hidden chest. He wondered if the person who made the symbol still lived somewhere nearby, or if a stranger had wandered into the forest by chance. Early the next morning, while Ryan was preparing breakfast, someone knocked softly on the cabin door. The sound made him freeze for a moment. Sammy looked at him with surprise. Ryan opened the door slowly. A woman stood outside. She appeared to be in her late 40s, wearing simple clothes and carrying a small bag. Her expression was calm, and her eyes were gentle. She greeted Ryan politely and introduced herself as Mira. She said she lived in the village a few miles away. Ryan invited her inside. She looked around the cabin with interest, as if she recognized something. When her eyes fell on the metal chest, she paused. Her expression changed. Not fear, not shock, but something deeper. A mix of memory and sadness. She asked quietly where they had found the chest. Ryan hesitated but decided to trust her. He explained how Sammy found the raised floor panel and how the chest had been hidden beneath it. Mira listened carefully. When Ryan finished, she placed her hand gently on the chest. She told them that many years ago, her grandparents lived in a nearby house that had burned down during a storm. She said they were known for helping people and storing important documents for villagers who were afraid of losing them during hard times. She explained that her grandfather used a special symbol on all items he guarded. A circle with an M inside it. The same mark on the chest. Ryan felt a wave of understanding wash over him. The symbol belonged to Myra's family. Mira continued speaking in a soft voice. After the fire destroyed her grandparents' home, many of their belongings were lost or scattered. People looked for some of the missing things, but not everything was found. She believed the metal chest must have been moved to the cabin before the fire and hidden for safety. Ryan asked if she knew what was inside. Mira shook her head. She said her grandparents never told anyone what they kept in their special chest. They believed some things were too important to speak of openly. Sammy asked if the chest should belong to her now. Mira sat silently for a moment. Then she said something surprising. She said she believed the chest had stayed hidden for a reason and that it revealed itself only when the right people came. She believed Ryan and Sammy were meant to find it. She told them she did not want to take the chest. Instead, she wanted to help them learn how to open it safely. She had seen her grandfather open similar locks before. She remembered he used a special wooden key. A key that had gone missing for many years. When Ryan described the old stone well with the symbol nearby, Myra's eyes widened. She said her grandfather often buried things near that spot. She believed the key might still be there, hidden under the soil or stored inside a small box. Hearing this filled Sammy with excitement. Ryan felt hope rising again. They had been searching blindly before, but now they had a clear clue. A real chance to unlock the chest. Mira promised to return the next morning with tools that might help them search. She wished them luck and walked back into the forest path. Her presence had brought peace, but also a stronger sense of purpose. That night, the chest felt different. As if it sensed that its long silence was nearing an end. Ryan sat with Sammy near the fire and told him that tomorrow might be the day they finally discovered the truth. Sammy smiled with bright eyes. The mystery that had filled their days was now deeper and more meaningful. The cabin felt alive with anticipation. The key to changing their future was waiting somewhere in the forest. And for the first time, Ryan felt that destiny was gently guiding them forward. Morning arrived with soft golden light spreading across the clearing. The cabin felt peaceful, yet there was an excited tension in the air. Ryan woke early and stepped outside to breathe the fresh forest air. He felt that this day carried promise. Something waited for them beneath the earth near the old well, something that had been hidden for many years. Sammy woke soon after. The moment he opened his eyes, he remembered Myra's words about the wooden key. He rushed to the table and touched the metal chest gently, as if greeting an old friend. The chest remained cold and silent, but Sammy felt it was almost ready to reveal its secret. They had barely finished breakfast when they heard footsteps approaching. Myra appeared at the cabin door, holding a small canvas bag. She smiled kindly and greeted them. She explained she had brought tools that could help them search around the stone well. She also carried a notebook filled with memories her grandmother had shared long ago. Inside it were drawings of symbols and stories about the family's past. Before leaving, Myra opened the notebook and showed them a small drawing of the wooden key her grandfather once used. It was not a simple key. It had curved edges and the same circular mark with an M carved in its center. She explained that the wooden key worked like a puzzle piece. It had to fit perfectly into the lock of the chest for the mechanism to move. With that knowledge, they started their walk toward the stone well. The forest greeted them with soft rustling leaves and bird calls echoing through the branches. Ryan carried a small shovel while Sammy carried a small brush they used for sweeping dust from corners of the cabin. Myra followed with her bag of tools, guiding them with memories she had carried since her childhood. When they reached the well, the place looked older than ever. Sunlight touched the stones, making the carvings slightly easier to see. Myra knelt beside the flat stone that held the symbol and traced it slowly. She whispered that her grandfather had been a careful man who believed that important things should be hidden where nature could protect them. Ryan examined the ground around the stone. The soil was firm but not too hard. It looked untouched for a long time. Sammy watched with bright eyes as his father began digging a shallow area beside the well. He brushed the loosened dirt away carefully. Minutes passed with no sign of anything. Ryan shifted to another spot and dug again. Still nothing. Myra suggested they search near the base of an old tree lying a few steps away. Its roots twisted in strange shapes, almost as if they guarded something. They moved to the fallen tree. Ryan dug close to a thick root and found only rocks and dry soil. He tried again on the other side. This time, Sammy brushed the soil gently and felt something solid beneath the dirt. His eyes widened. He called his father with excitement. Ryan knelt beside him and brushed the soil away slowly. A small wooden plank appeared. It looked smooth, shaped by careful hands long ago. It was not the key, but it was a clue. The plank had the familiar M symbol carved on its corner. Myra took the plank in her hands, studying it with emotion. She said her grandfather used wooden markers to lead himself back to hidden items. If this plank was here, the real key must be close. Encouraged, they widened the search area. Ryan dug deeper near the plank's location. The soil was soft, and soon his shovel hit something again. This time, it was a small wooden box, covered in dirt and roots. It was simple, about the size of a book, with a sliding lid. Ryan lifted it gently. Sammy stood beside him holding his breath. Myra closed her eyes for a moment, as if silently thanking the forest. The box felt light, but something shifted inside it. Ryan wiped the dirt and slid the lid open. Inside lay a wooden object wrapped in old cloth. He unwrapped it slowly. There it was. The wooden key. It was smooth and beautifully carved. The curved edges matched the drawing Myra showed them earlier. The same symbol rested in the center. Ryan felt a wave of awe. This object had survived storms, time, and the burning of a home. Yet here it lay, waiting for the day it would be needed again. Sammy touched it gently, smiling with pure wonder. He said it felt warm, almost alive. Mira nodded, saying her grandfather believed objects held meaning when trusted to the right hands. With the key found, they walked back to the cabin. The air felt different. The birds seemed louder, the forest brighter, as if nature itself celebrated the discovery. Ryan held the key carefully in his hand, feeling its weight and importance. When they reached the cabin, the chest sat on the table, quiet but powerful. Ryan placed the wooden key beside it. For a moment, no one spoke. They had been waiting for this moment for days, and now it was finally here. Mira stepped forward and explained that they must be gentle. The wooden key was old and could break if forced. She instructed Ryan to insert it slowly into the lock and turn in a smooth motion. Sammy stood close, gripping the edge of the table with excitement. Ryan took a deep breath, lifted the key, and placed it into the narrow keyhole. It fit perfectly, as if the chest had been waiting only for this key. He turned it gently. At first, nothing happened. Then a soft click echoed inside the chest. A deeper sound followed, like an old mechanism unlocking after years of silence. The lock loosened. The lid trembled slightly. Sammy gasped. Mira stepped back, her eyes filled with emotion. Ryan lifted the lid with both hands. Inside the chest lay layers of carefully arranged items wrapped in cloth. The first layer held documents bound with ribbon. Beneath them were small wooden cases. Everything was preserved as if someone had taken great care to protect the contents. Ryan picked up the first bundle of papers and untied the ribbon. The pages were old but readable. They contained maps of land surrounding the forest. Some marked boundaries of property. Others listed names and agreements from many years ago. Mira leaned closer and explained that her grandparents helped many villagers store valuable documents. These documents looked like land ownership papers. Some showed large areas of untouched forest land. The more they looked, the more they realized the truth. Whoever owned the chest had legal claim to a massive portion of land surrounding the cabin. Land worth money. A lot of money. Ryan felt his hands shake slightly. He never imagined anything like this. He had come to the cabin to find a simple home for his son. Instead, he had uncovered something worth far more. Under the papers lay small wooden cases. Inside one of them were gold coins from many decades ago. They glittered softly under the sunlight. Sammy's eyes widened with amazement. Another case held old jewelry pieces made of delicate metal and stones. Each piece looked handcrafted and rare. Mira covered her mouth in surprise. She said her grandmother once mentioned that a small part of their heritage had been hidden during dangerous times. She never knew where those items ended up. Ryan looked at her with respect and gratitude. He told her he wanted to share whatever they found with her family. Mira smiled through gentle tears and said something that would stay in their hearts forever. She said the forest chose who to trust. She believed the discovery was meant to help Ryan and Sammy because they respected the cabin and its history with care. The chest held many treasures, but the greatest treasure was the truth hidden inside the documents. When Ryan studied the largest map again, he realized something powerful. The ruined cabin stood on land that belonged to the original family. And according to the papers, that land extended far beyond the cabin's clearing. It meant the cabin was sitting on land worth millions. That evening, they placed all items safely back in the chest. The cabin felt warmer, fuller, almost glowing with new energy. Sammy kept smiling, unable to stop imagining how their life would change. Ryan sat beside him, grateful and humbled. The wooden key lay on the table between them, a symbol of destiny. They had opened the chest, but the story was not finished. Tomorrow, their future would begin to change. The morning after discovering the treasures inside the chest felt different from any morning Ryan had ever known. The sunlight entering the cabin felt brighter. The air felt lighter. Even the wooden walls looked newer, as if the cabin itself understood that its long-kept secret had finally been revealed. Sammy woke with excitement buzzing inside him. He ran to the table where the chest lay and touched its lid softly. To him, The chest was no longer just a box. It was a doorway that had brought hope into their lives. Ryan stood near the window, looking out toward the forest. He could still hardly believe what they had found. The old papers had shown boundaries and land ownership that stretched far beyond anything he ever imagined. There were old maps showing streams, hills, and large pieces of untouched land. There were documents listing mineral rights and legal ownership from generations ago. If everything on those papers still held legal value, the land was worth more than he could even count. Mira arrived shortly after breakfast. She walked into the cabin with quiet steps, her face gentle but thoughtful. She knew that the discovery changed everything. When she looked at the open chest and the items inside, her eyes softened. To her, these were not just treasures. They were pieces of her family's history, preserved with care and love. Ryan greeted her with respect. He knew that without her help, they might never have found the wooden key or understood the symbol on the chest. He thanked her sincerely. Mira smiled and said she felt peace knowing her grandparents' secret had been found by people who valued honesty and kindness. They sat at the table to look at the documents more carefully. Mira explained that while the papers were old, the signatures and marks were clear. The maps showed large areas that once belonged to her family. She said that after the fire destroyed their home, people assumed the papers were lost, so no one kept track of the claims. Over the years, the forest had simply been left untouched. No one tried to claim the land again because they believed the original owners were gone. Ryan felt something heavy inside him. He had never asked for such a discovery. He only wanted a home for his son. Now he stood in the middle of land worth millions. He did not know if he had the right to keep it. He asked Mira if she wanted to take everything back since it came from her grandparents. Mira looked at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head gently. She said her grandparents always believed that kindness guided destiny. They had helped people without expecting anything in return. She said if the chest appeared to Ryan and Sammy, then it was meant to help them build a better life. She believed her family's true legacy was not wealth but generosity. Still, Ryan insisted that she should share in the discovery. He said it would not be fair for him to keep everything. Mira finally agreed that they would divide the value of the land and items respectfully. She wanted nothing more than for the land to be cared for with love. Ryan promised that he would protect it for as long as he lived. Later that afternoon, Ryan and Mira walked to the nearest town office to speak with the local land officer. They carried the maps and documents carefully in a folder. Sammy came along, holding the folder tightly as if guarding a precious treasure. The land officer was an older man with silver hair and wise eyes. When he saw the papers, he adjusted his glasses and studied them with great detail. He examined signatures, seals, and the dates written on the documents. He compared them with old records kept in the town registry. Hours passed as the officer searched through files and books. Finally, he sat back in his chair and looked at Ryan and Mira with a serious expression. He explained that the documents were authentic. The land had indeed belonged to Myra's grandparents. Since no one had made any claim in decades, the surviving rightful connection was now tied to the discovery of the original documents. He added that the cabin stood on one of the largest sections of the land. This section alone was worth a great deal because of its location and natural surroundings. The entire land, when measured by the maps, held a value of millions. Ryan felt his breath catch. He looked at Sammy, who smiled as if he already understood their life had changed forever. Mira placed a comforting hand on Ryan's shoulder, telling him that everything happening was part of a larger journey. The officer prepared new legal documents that named both Ryan and Mira as the rightful owners. Ryan signed his name carefully. He felt his hands shake slightly, not from fear but from the weight of the moment. After everything he had been through, life had offered him a future he never dared to dream about. When they walked back to the cabin, the sky had turned a warm shade of orange. Birds flew overhead. The forest whispered softly through the trees. The cabin stood proudly, no longer just a broken shelter but a symbol of hope, history, and new beginnings. Inside the cabin, Sammy ran around excitedly. He asked if they could fix every part of the cabin and make it beautiful. He asked if they could plant flowers outside and build a swing near the tall tree. He asked if they could make a small room for Mira when she visited. Ryan hugged him and said yes to everything. For the first time in his life, he spoke those words without worrying about money. That night, Mira stayed for dinner. They shared warm bread and a simple meal, but the moment felt rich and full. They talked about building a new life, protecting the land, and honoring the memory of Myra's grandparents. Sammy listened to every word, his eyes glowing with happiness. After dinner, Ryan stepped outside alone for a moment. He looked up at the sky. The stars shone brightly above the trees. The forest air was cool and calm. He felt grateful in a way he could not express. He thought about the day he bought the ruined cabin for $50. He had felt tired, lost, and uncertain. Now, the same cabin had given him more than money. It had given him a future, a sense of belonging, and a story that connected him to people who lived long before him. He returned inside and found Sammy sleeping peacefully near the warm fire. Mira sat quietly, looking at the chest with thoughtful eyes. Ryan thanked her again for everything. She told him she believed her grandparents were smiling somewhere, happy that their hidden legacy had reached someone who needed it. Before leaving for the night, Mira placed the wooden key back inside the chest. She said it should rest there again, but now it would rest in a home filled with love, not silence. She wished them both peace and walked into the forest path with a gentle smile. Ryan locked the cabin door and sat beside Sammy. He placed a hand on his son's shoulder and whispered that their life had changed forever, but the most important thing would always remain the same. They would face every day together with strength and care. The fire crackled softly. The treasure inside the chest glowed faintly under the warm light. The cabin felt alive, no longer ruined, but reborn. And so, the poor single father who once searched for a home had discovered a hidden world worth millions. Yet the true treasure he gained was far greater. It was hope, trust, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow for his son. A new chapter had begun for them, and the forest that once kept its secrets now watched over their future with quiet pride.